Hello everybody, and welcome to NorCal Slot Car Zoom. Today's video is a transcript of a Zoom meeting that was held with members of the NorCal racing community about the upcoming RevoSlot class at Motown Raceway. We'll discuss some basic setup tips and some things you may not know if you're new to RevoSlot slot cars. Welcome everybody to NorCal Slot Car Chat, or whatever we want to call it. We've done 3 or 4 of these, and hopefully they'll be informative, and we have a topic usually beforehand. Tonight it's on the new class we're going to start racing at Modesto, the RevoSlot cars. So I've got a short presentation, and then we'll just open it up to questions and go from there. So this is our logo. You know our website, NorCalSlotCar.com. Wait a minute, Ian, what's the website address again?
This is beautiful. NorCalSlotCar.com.
Okay, I didn't want to screw it up. So NorCalSlotCar.com. We've got everybody's, or most everybody's tracks on there. I talked to Nate Katz today, or texted back and forth with him. He's getting ready to start racing again. And so he was thinking about doing a race in November. So he's seen our website and likes everything that's going on. So he's probably going to come to Mike's race. I don't see Kiwi Mike on here, but maybe he'll be on later. But he's planning on coming to that race if possible. So we're going to start racing RevoSlot. The Sacramento group has been racing RevoSlot for quite a while. The Bay Area group has not been, even though a lot of people have the cars. So we're going to start, and we're going to start it at Motown, and whoever wants to run it obviously can run it. Home tracks can decide what they want to run. We're going to keep it to the GT cars, because on the big tracks, I think the GT1 cars would definitely have an advantage. On the small home tracks, I don't think they probably do. They may actually be at a disadvantage. But for this series, because most everybody's buying cars new, we're going to keep it just to those 6 GT cars that are available for RevoSlot.
Tim, can you quickly...
Right.
Question?
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
GT2.
I originally called it GT2, but a couple people online questioned me about it, like the McLaren is not a GT2 car. So I changed it back to GT just for that reason.
Well, it's just that they have GT1s as well.
Yeah, so I just changed it to GT and listed the cars that are legal.
So no Marcos?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Marcos is on there.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, so, well, we can talk about that later. I'll go through this, and then you'll see the cars again at the end. RevoSlot has really nice parts lists that are available on their Facebook page. If you're not on their Facebook page, I'm not sure if Electric Dreams has this, but if you go to Pendle Slot, they have this on each of the cars. So it's specific for each car, but a lot of the parts are generic, like the bearings and the axles and the gears or so forth. Motown is going to start carrying these cars, and I think there was about 8 or 9 orders placed at the race. The ones that I've circled here in red are the parts that I recommended him to stock as replacement parts. I've heard from some people, nobody that I know, but I've heard guides break, so it doesn't hurt to have extra guides, the rear tires, the gears. And I highly recommend on the very bottom, if you don't have a RevoSlot car, because a lot of these screws are different size. They're 3 millimeter, and there's some different flatheads and things like that. So that RS213 at the bottom, full set of screws, it's every screw that comes in the car in a little bag. And it's like $6. So it's definitely the way to go to get started with this. And he's going to, like I said, these are the 6 items I requested or recommended to him that he carry as replacement parts. He can get anything else, but that's kind of what I told him would probably be a good idea to start with. As far as option parts, this is going to be a stock class. So the wood guide comes with the car, so you can just take that off and put it back on. And we'll talk about a basic setup in a couple slides from now. I think the best way, and none of this is set in stone right now, we're kind of in growing pains, but I think the best way, for at least for Motown, is to go with any RevoSlot tire is legal. One is it's going to be very difficult to tell a 22 from a 30 without a durometer or something like that. The Super Grip 15s are probably useless on a spray glue track because they're going to be too sticky. The G25, I don't have any experience with, but I've been told that they were designed for polycar track. So they may work on a wood track, but they are definitely not designed for a wood track. So as of now, it's going to be stock with the guide that comes in the car you can change, and then the tires. The basic setup for these cars, it's pretty simple. We are going to have either a minimum tire diameter or a ride height limit. The reason being, if you go on some of the websites, one of the guys in England, James Cleave, who's a world champion, has a really good 5 or 6 part series on how to set these cars up, but he cuts the front tires down to nothing. They're just slivers and they look terrible, quite frankly. You know, if part of the reason we're doing this is to make these cars look good. So without either a tire diameter or a minimum ride height, we're going to have that problem. So we're again going to discuss this and figure out what we feel is best, but there probably will be a minimum tire diameter. And that will help too, because these tires are not really easy to true. So if you don't have to true them down to slivers, it's even better.
Jim,
Yeah.
I don't know those cars too well, but I don't think they have an adjustable ride height for the front axle,
No, they don't.
or do they?
So
So you'd have to shim those uprights or something to change
well, you can
it.
shim the uprights, but that is not a stock thing, so that would not be legal for the way we're going to run
It
these.
wouldn't be legal, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you just have a tire diameter rule, that'll take care of the.
Yeah, that'll take care of it. The next thing is just a little setup tip, and you'll see this on the websites. There's, like I said, there's 2 or 3 websites or YouTube channels that show you how to set these up. Just a little tape between these 4 contact points between the 2 chassis pieces, the body mount and the actual chassis itself. I'm using a type of duct tape. It's real thin. It's not a regular duct tape. I would guess electrical tape would work, but this is kind of like a fabric tape. So it seems to work really good. It just cut a square like that, put it on the chassis, and then cut the hole out, screw through it 2 or 3 times so you get all the edges off the tape so it doesn't bind, and then you've got a nice movement between the 2 chassis pieces. The wood guide comes with it, so that's pretty obvious. These are spring-loaded guides. So with the ride height we're going to run, you pretty much have to leave the spring in or it won't contact the track. And that the video that I mentioned, they cut the front tires down where you don't need the spring and the chassis is right on the ground. But again, the chassis or the front tires look like even very small rubber bands. So this is an easy way to do it. When you do rewire the car, because you have to take the guide out, put the new guide in, I put the red wire on the right, which seemed to be normal to me because every other car I've ever had has had the red wire on the right. This one has the red wire on the left. So just be aware of that. You will obviously find that out the first time you run the car if you don't do that. But just a heads up on that, the red wire goes on the left. I just use a piece of tape to hold the wires down and get a very nice left to right movement. It's self-centering, very easy. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, Jim, are you going to stipulate that you have to run the RevoSlot guide, or are we going to have guides open as well? I
don't know if, I have to look into that because I'm not sure what would fit because of the way this thing sits in the car with the spring loaded and everything. I frankly wouldn't have a problem with people running non-RevoSlot guides if they work, but I don't know if they do or not. It's like the tires.
Okay.
The RevoSlot tires don't fit on other wheels and vice versa because of the way the wheel is situated.
Okay.
That's about all there is to the setup of these things. And so those of you that ran my car the other day, it ran pretty good. Tires were glued and true. We'll talk about that in just a second. I did do 15 minutes at 5 volts with semichrome. The motor is movable, so you can set the mesh on this. So I set the mesh fairly tight, not tight where it wouldn't move, but tighter than I would run it. So maybe there's a high spot and just it bottoms out at one point where it turns around, and then hit it with semichrome for 15 minutes. Now I've got pretty much a very even backlash all the way around. The car's relatively quiet, so works well. So that's really all I did to my car. I'm not sure what else you can do to these cars in terms of setup, the way we're going to run them.
Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I had one other question. I did notice that the different cars there's a variety of different anodization colors for like the uprights. Do you know if those indicate anything? Because if they are like a different height or something like that, it'd be good to know that.
I don't know that. I'm assuming they're just color coded to the different cars and they're the same. I can call Alan up at 132 Slot Car because he is at the distributor and ask him. Mario, did you know that? You know the answer to that, or you had a question?
No, I had a question. If you wanted to go back to the last slide, I know you're using that semi chrome. Where do you exactly put that? Do you put that in between the gear mesh and let that run to?
Yes, I put it, it's a polishing compound, and there's other brands out there. I like it. This is what HO slot car racers are used forever, so I just use it. Mike can have it available if you want to buy some, or if you want to buy some locally, you can find it at Harley Davidson shops. But Mike used to sell it as a distributor, so he can bring some to the track if anybody wants it, or that's where you can find it. I put it on the gears pretty liberally and hit it, put my hand over it so it doesn't splatter all over my face.
Right.
And let it run. And I usually let it run for 2 or 3 minutes and put some more on, and do that 5 or 6 or 7 times and do it for 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll start packing a few tubes when I come to the races, so it'll be available at the track.
Okay, thanks,
And
Mike.
it's not too expensive.
I think Mike has had success wet sanding these. I've not really tried wet sanding. I've just tried to go very slow. The gentleman that I mentioned, James Cleve, as well as Dennis Sampson, those two guys are very well known, very knowledgeable, and have trued a lot of these tires. They use this, I call it a grab and release. And so you turn the knob in, let it catch, and then pull it back out. So it's truing the tire, and you're pulling it back out and letting the tire cool. So here's kind of what it looks like. And you can hear the tire grab.
So are you cycling that, Jim?
Yes, cycling it back and forth, hit it till it grabs, for, let it grab for like 2 or 3 seconds or a second, then pull it back out, and then just keep doing it. And it just, for whatever reason, it allows the tire to cool, because these tires will ball up if you just leave them on, because they get warm and they ball up like some of the other rubber that we've had issues with in the past. But this is the recommendation of the 2 people that I know that are in the know and really know how to do this. Obviously, this is not the only way to do it. Like I said, Mike uses water, but this is definitely a way that works. So it's one way to do it. If you have a Hootie tire truer, these wheels are 3mm wheels, because they're 3mm axles. I just take the axle out of the car and put it in the Hootie tire truer, because the Hootie is a 3mm bearing, and all the arbors that you have for Hootie are 3mm arbors that are cut down to whatever size is it, like 3/32 or whatever. So I just took the axle out of the car, put it in the Hootie. If you don't have a Hootie, you're going to have to, Mike suggested using the bushings that come in the kit as bearings to put in the apparatus for like a tire raiser or something like that. So it's just something you're going to have to work around, because it is a 3mm axle. And with these, just with any other tire like this that balls up and gums up, just go really slow and watch it, because you can start truing it, and then you turn your power off and you see just little chunks of rubber, and you pull them off with your fingers and then start again. But you just have to go really, really slow with these, or you risk, if it starts balling up, then it'll get into the tire, and then it'll get into your truer, and it'll create a divot. And so that's, there's no secret to this, and so that's the only thing you can do with these tires, as well as some of the other tires we've had. Evo compound, very similar to that, so on.
Yeah, it's just heat buildup.
It's heat building up that's balling up the tire, and then the balls get on the balls stick on the rubber, just like you do on a racetrack. When you get balls of rubber on your tire, the tire gets really loose and you have no traction. These, they get into the drum, and then they create a divot, because it's a piece of rubber sitting on top, and just kind of messes everything up. So again, it's just go slow, wet sand if you want, try the grab and release. And we're not going to have to true these a lot. Like the Formula One tires, we're truing them down 2mm almost. So these, we're going to keep them tall, so it'll be easier to true as well. One other thing, if you've never had a RevoSlot car before, it's 3mm set screws, so you need a different Allen wrench. It's a 1.5mm Allen wrench. I got mine at RC Country. NSR does make one. It's the silver one. Everybody has the blue one, which is the slotted. The purple's the NSR. The white is the silver is the slotted. So, but any 1.5mm Allen wrench will fit. Unfortunately, unlike slotted, they don't put one of those little cheapy Allen wrenches in the kit with it. So you do have to get the one to be able to take the tires off and work on all the other things on the car. When we start this, and I talked to Mike about this last night, we're going to try we're going to start trying this with RevoSlot at Modesto just to see how it works. It could be a total bust and everybody hates it, but I want to try it once just to see how it works. If you're used to HO racing, and not too many people here are, but we do this at the Fray. This is the race format we use. So it's a round robin system if there's more than 6 people, which there typically are. And the winner, it's a 10-lap heat. So it's a short heat. The winner gets 6 points and so on. And so if you win all 6 heats, you get a perfect score of 36 and probably win the race. But it's a little different format. It has the possibility of allowing other winners, because I think, a 3-minute race, 6 lanes, 18 minutes, usually the fastest guys are finishing in the top, unless they're like me and sometimes they have terrible races, even though they're fast, they come off a lot. But this allows, I think, some possible new winners, because it's kind of luck of the draw who's on the track with you. So in theory, if you have the fastest 6 guys on the track at one time, one guy's going to get a last. If you have the slowest 6 guys on the track at one time, one of them is going to win that heat. And so it kind of jumbles the things up a little bit. And like I said, we don't have to do this more than once. If people like it, if they do, we can continue it. Whether it's one race of the 3 that we're going to run at Modesto, we are going to probably start racing 3 races a day at Modesto with addition to the RevoSlot. So this is just something new that I want to try. And like I said, see how it goes. If everybody hates it, you can yell at me because it's my idea.
So Jim,
So those are the cars. I mentioned that before. I'm not sure if you can see the one on the right, the Porsche, but this is going to be GT. The reason I originally called it GT2 is on the Electric Dreams website, they differentiate them by GT2 and GT1. So the McLaren's not a GT2 car. Somebody mentioned that today, and I understand that. But so we're just going to call this RevoSlot GT. So it's the street-based cars. The other ones are more of racing-based cars, the Toyota, Mercedes CLR, what's the other one? But these are the more production-ish based cars. So they will play nice together. And I think they should be a great series. I know that you guys in Sacramento, I say you guys, but I'm part of Sacramento too. But I've never run RevoSlot. I just bought one last week. And so I know you run them, and I think very successful, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, any questions on RevoSlot in general to start with, and then or anything else, and we'll go from there.
Jim, I have another question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
What you mentioned that the GT1 cars are not like, they're not really fair and they have an advantage. What is the difference between them and the other GT cars?
Some of them are extremely low in center of gravity. The Porsche GT1 probably has very little advantage. And like I said, I just bought one last week. So I'm basing my opinion on what they do at Electric Dreams. At Electric Dreams, if it's a GT1 category car, it's allowed to race, but it's a 5-lap penalty in an 18-minute race. So you run your race, you take 5 laps off your total, and that's when you sit. And I don't think that does any good for anybody to have a separate class and then take 5 laps off. And there's always the question, it should be 5 laps. Maybe it should be 3 laps. Maybe it should be 7 laps. So I think it's just easier for what we're doing here to keep it to those 6 GT cars.
Well, in Northern with the Sacramento group, we haven't noticed a big difference in the cars. Nobody seems to have a big advantage. Nobody's going to the even though we allow the GT ones, nobody's running the GT ones because they're faster. They run it because they like the car, but nobody's like dominating with a GT1.
I would totally agree with you on a short track, but again, I'm basing my opinion on hearsay or whatever. I think on a big track, that's different.
Well, I even on my track, and I know
I'm not considering yours a big track. I'm talking about Motown and
those tracks. And I get it, but that's what we've found so far.
Yeah, I consider any home track. I mean, you have a big home track, but it's still a home track in my opinion. Just for lack of better terms, what to call it, but different than the big commercial track. So that's how I'm differentiating the two.
That's right. No, I'm just saying you're asking what they use them. We've used them.
Yeah, I actually think the big cars would be at a disadvantage on your track, personally.
Oh, I don't find mine any faster. I run the Porsche mostly.
Yeah. So that's the reasoning behind it.
So
and most of especially the people at Motown, these are all new people getting in. So it's relatively easy to say it's got to be these 6 cars for now.
I would probably say maybe let them run or try it and see what the times are to see if they're comparable to the standard cars that you want to do. I mean, they just may run the same.
The problem with that is everybody's got to buy a second car then if they want to figure out which one's faster.
Well, no one has to buy a second car if this is their first car they're buying.
Well, but if it's faster, then they'd have to buy another one if they disallow it.
Yeah, so the point is to nip it in the bud, so to speak, and get everybody, at least at Motown, on an even playing field or semi level playing field.
Or you can bring
Well,
your
it's-
car down there.
Yeah.
There's 6 cars. It's not like there's no choices. So
Yeah.
the GT2 cars, that's plenty, and just let people choose from those.
And by the
Nice
way,
one.
he sold about 8 or 9 cars Saturday. We just announced this at Motown on Saturday that it was actually for sure going to be the next class, and he took orders for I think 8 or 9 cars on the spot. So it's going to work. I think we'll probably run this at Fast Track too, but it's not a done deal at Fast Track just yet.
Did Jerry? I think Jerry had a question.
Yeah, is my mic on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
There's your video.
So I've talked to Alan a few times and talked to him, several times actually.
Alan Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 'cause I was selling bringing the cars down from him to sell over at RC Country in Sacramento.
Before you get going, Jerry, I sent the information to Terry about Alan,
Okay.
his contact info, and told her that we were starting to race these at Modesto, and the group
Awesome.
in Sacramento already races them, so she has the information if she wants to become a dealer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So one of the times I was talking to Alan, so they do run 2 classes for the Revos, the GT2 class, they run it with stock rubber, and then the GT1s they use the foam because Revo does sell foam tires for the GT1s, and so maybe that's something we can look at later on, obviously for Modesto and Sacramento.
Yeah.
But I think we have enough variety with the GT2s. So I mean the Porsches, my GT2 Porsche runs really good. So and I know there's some other cars up there that we run in Sacramento that are GT2s that run really well. I know what is it, the one that what is the Marcos? The Marcos run pretty good. I'm pretty surprised how good the Marcos runs. A lot of people
So is
don't
the
like
Viper. The
and the
Viper
Viper,
runs
yeah.
well.
So I think it's a good class to start off. And
It's an easy class. It's relatively
Yeah.
inexpensive.
so that was my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Jim, I have one other question. I noticed, or I guess Herman and I were talking about this the other day, and we noticed that in Europe and in the UK, they tend to run. There's like a lot, like there were a lot of Porsches racing. It was all Porsches. Do you know if that's
in the RevoSlot class?
Yeah, like
Okay.
with the video that James was posting.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's because it's specific to the Porsche, or is it just that like that's the car that they all choose, or what's the deal with that?
Don't really know. The only when I was looking at this a little while ago, I went back to all the proxy races that they have throughout the country. And it seemed like the Supra and the Viper were the most popular and tended to be at the front in the proxy races. Don't know what that means. I know the Marcos is very short, so I think on a nice tight track it might be good, and that may be why they don't run it at a proxy race, because they've got to run on different tracks. I've run Mike Andrews' Marcos on his track, and it was really good. I have the McLaren, and like I said, I don't have much to compare it with, but it sure ran good at Modesto.
It's quick.
So it's kind of a learning thing for all of us, which one, if there is one that's better, but I'm not sure why the Porsche would be any better or any worse, or just who knows.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is Randy. I'm going to throw this out just because it's something that was on a forum recently. I think it was on Alan Smith's forum, by the way, whatever that is, Slot Car Illustrated or something like that.
Yeah.
They were having a batch issue with the angle winder gears on Revo slots. And a lot of guys were replacing the aluminum hub nylon gears with metal gears in order to get around that. And in fact, they were even having some issues with those. So there might be some batch issues, and it'd probably be a good idea to maybe pick up some spares.
Okay, I put that on the spares list. We could allow the metal gear because it's an option part from RevoSlot.
Well, I would leave that up to what you guys want to.
I don't see any reason not to allow the metal gear. I don't see any advantage or disadvantage or in terms of performance. So if you want to replace it with a metal gear, I don't see that as a big deal. Now, was that, I've heard some problems with the new cars, the Escort and the Alpha. Was that with them or was it with the GT cars?
It was the GT cars. It was
Okay.
all of the cars that were being released in that time period, and that was within the last 6 months. So could be fixed, or if if they have a bunch of these parts, they may just be trying to get rid of them. So buyer beware, but probably worth getting some spares just in case.
Yeah, well, you're right. And you're doubly right because nothing else fits on this.
Yeah, that's
If you
the
break
other
a spur gear,
problem
you
with
can't
it
just
too, and people are
put your-
really pissed about that.
So that's why I asked him to bring in spur gears as one of those replacement parts.
Yeah.
Some of the things are, pinions are not going to break. I've asked you to bring in axles because it's not impossible to bend an axle. So I tried to figure out what could go wrong and bring those parts in. You can break guides, stuff like that. So those are the parts that I asked him to, or suggested to him that he bring in as a tab on the wall.
Thanks for watching NorCal Slot Car Scene, and you've seen our ideas for the upcoming RevoSlot class in Northern California. See you next time.